Welcome to the Data Democracy. Presented by renowned O'Reilly author Ole Olesen-Bagneux. Powered by Xenia. Make your data accessible and discoverable by anyone, anywhere, at any time.
Hi, Ivo.
Hey, Ole. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm happy to have you on.
Oh, looking forward to our discussion. Hi there.
Yeah. This will be great. Okay, so in this conversation, we'll go through three things, right? I want to hear a little bit about your background, and then I want to hear what you're currently doing, and then we have a surprise element in the end of the conversation that we will reveal at the end of the conversation. So first of all, Ivo, for the listeners, can you explain a little bit about what you've done in the past and what you're currently doing in your work life?
Right. I was a consultant in my previous life, a software developer, a banker, leading a division in a regional bank here in Austria, and now I run a data team of consultants with specific group, and we're fully focused on data within specific group and data management, data operations, and data engineering, and really focusing on those three elements for in terms of services. But we also started doing products. So we have two exciting new products that we can talk about. And very, very excited to be in the world of data. It is the place to be right now, I think. And
yeah, I very much agree. Data is and has been, I guess, for a while, something that is changing, something that is difficult to solve for most companies. So am I getting this right, that you moved into data from some kind of other discipline or other professional practice, or did you always focus on data in your work life?
I actually was doing forensic data analytics with the Big Four. Was a senior consultant as a manager there, I don't know, 12 years ago. So this is where I saw the value of of not only the data analytics, but actually extracting some knowledgeable, some insightful knowledge, but from the data, but actually requiring the tooling and the infrastructure to get there. Distributed systems at scale. That was before the whole cloud, exponential growth, where you actually had to put computers together and create software to do some of the tasks, to parallelize some of the processing. The early days of big data, essentially, where you just couldn't do it in the cloud, but you also couldn't do it on premise in one system. So you kind of had to be creative, and this is where I always kind of found the data discipline intriguing before it was a thing. I think back then at that age we spoke about analytics and didn't speak about much else.
Yeah, and big data, right? Big data was a term 10 years ago, even 15 years ago. And there is this paradox with big data that much of the methodology, many of the ideas are so great, and then you have these distributed systems, right? That kind of limits in terms of technological capacity what you can do with big data. It's extremely complex to manage distributed systems, right? And then came the cloud, and I had a fun conversation with some of the colleagues in Xenia a couple of weeks ago, where we discussed what would have happened if that evolution had been the opposite. If we had the cloud before we had big data, what would have happened?
Ole, you surprised me with a very interesting hypothetical. I remember, especially back in my undergrad, I did a research paper, like a bachelor's thesis, if you can call that, on cloud computing. And I remember the discussion that was like 2009, where at least the popular opinion amongst professors here, at least in continental Europe, seemed to be that, this is big tech companies who are just trying to sell us some infra and calling it the cloud. And is this really so great? Does it really scale horizontally the way they actually claim this to be? And do we really lose sovereignty by relying on them? And that was the early days of Azure was just announced, and just like early days of Azure, and so it's an interesting hypothetical. Nowadays, you still have a lot of businesses that haven't gone to the cloud, right? In Europe, in the German-speaking world, you can consider the fact that finance and banking are really, I mean, previously it was if you were a decision maker and you really wanted to argue for budgets, well, there were good reasons to stay out of the cloud, right? And now it's kind of you have to have a reason not to go to the cloud that you want to explain to management. Like, yes, maybe for various reasons, but it's definitely moving more towards being the default. Now, it's a huge paradigm shift in how we think about, data protection, how we think about the risks that come out of the cloud, and how we think about tooling that we could in the data space that we can only use on premise before with our legacy systems and all the ways and that all our pipelines are built and all our reporting is built. And now we can, by being able to go to the cloud, it's almost the choice is there's too much choice. What shall we do? Ultimately, is it really much cheaper? Does it really make sense to do it because of cost? And the answer to these questions are, I think there was a hype where it was pretty clear that the cloud is the way to go. I think it still is the way to go, but the question is with what, when, and how to organize it is what basically the fight is. So it's not like whether you're going to be using the cloud, but the use cases and the toolings and the kind of the entire stack that you use there, you kind of have to tailor it to your needs to most benefit, right?
Yeah, I very much agree. Apologies. Please continue, Ivo.
Yeah, and that includes looking outside your immediate favorite vendor of choice, right? Looking beyond your immediate team and just trying to get smart. I mean, obviously this is a minute for advertising, but yeah, I strongly believe that the choice is too much. It's not like previously you bought Oracle. It's Oracle. It's pretty clear. You bought IBM. This is like the companies the past. You bought Microsoft, and now there's a in the data space. There's a lot more choice. Like there's open source. There's other vendors that specialize in various elements of the stack. So it's really not trivial to expect that your own team is perfectly knowledgeable about all those technologies and how to use them, right? So,
yes, agreed. And I mean, I've been thinking a lot about this lately, both about big data and the cloud. But then again, on the other side, I mean, the movement towards cloud. You're also mentioning that there was this hype around cloud. Maybe it's too much to call it a hype, but I agree that there was this standard answer that if someone was to do a transformation of an IT infrastructure setup, an IT landscape, it would be towards the cloud. Now, lately, and I don't know about you, Ivo, but lately I've been seeing a lot of calculations made on the economic benefit of going back on-prem. And I've been seeing also like this, and then there's this entire impossibility of moving. Like you can't run a factory on the cloud. You simply can't. And if it's a simple Google search, I mean, to try googling, can I run a factory on the cloud? You basically can't. I mean, if you really, really insist, of course you can. But it's just, why on earth would you want to do that? I mean,
right.
machines have embedded IT, right?
Right. And no, absolutely. But by the way, the same applies to AI, right? Now with the rise of what's the name of that company that producing that wants to produce a tiny box, right? If you can have like an on-premise appliance that can run like a 70 billion model and that works on the normal power outlet and costs relatively little, that like why would you want to go all in the cloud? Now the reason why the economics changed the thing is because, well, first in the beginning, it was there was a clear business case for going to the cloud. So you didn't go to the cloud for like the added security. You didn't go to the cloud for the tooling alone that is there. You just do it because it will save you money, because the infrastructure that you're running on premise, that you're running a whole data center for, you're just running too much on your own. And there's no economic sense in being like a bank that has everything, right? There's a good reason why, I don't know, Microsoft, I don't know what we always say billion, but maybe they're spending 1.5 billion. I don't know what the number is right now on security alone per year, right? Can you do that as a bank? No, regardless of what bank you are. Now, but then people got complacent, right? They moved this, especially with around the modern data stack in the data space. Speaking about our kind of area of expertise, they started just using the cloud as like let's select star, kind cowboy style select star from everything. Well, obviously the fact that you don't have like a DBA team running, the operations doesn't mean that you shouldn't have like a FinOps team running the cloud spend numbers. And yeah, you could do this more efficiently. You could definitely save money, but only if you willingly and if you're cognizant about how to do it.
Yeah.
What many companies, especially in the era of easy money, found out only later is that they've been running massively ineffective cloud infrastructures because they just went crazy with selecting star with no checks and balances, no guardrails of any kind. And yeah, then if there's no limit to how much you can spend with the cloud. So from a CFO and CEO perspective, it's pretty clear that you need to change. But also something you mentioned with companies move to the cloud as part of transformations. This is actually very interesting. I think we're past, or we should at least be past the digital transformation age. I mean, we did 10 years of digital transformation when we talk about digital. Have we transformed digitally? So cloud was like, if you change it's like a Conway's law, right? Where the systems are tailored to the or the departments are tailored to the systems. You change the systems, you change the department. You really had to bring in some fresh air, oxygen into the IT departments in many incumbent organizations. In the fintech space, you saw how like fintech was popping everywhere and running efficient products that customer loved compared to the incumbent, let's say, where most of our customers are banks. I'm knowledgeable in the banking space. And but yeah, the other element is I want to ask you something. Look Your Data podcast around data democracy, and I love the term data democracy. And I was just listening to one of the episodes today, driving to work, about and got me thinking, like, what does data democracy really means in terms of in practical terms for an organization? And the analogy that I came up with that I want to share with you is, there used to be like a saying, I don't know if it was Winston Churchill or whoever said that, it's like, what's the best argument against democracy is the 5-minute discussion with the average voter. Well, what's the best argument? What's the best argument? But it's still the best we have, right? Obviously, I'm a convinced Democrat. But the statement was what's the best arguments against data democracy? Well, the best argument against data democracy is giving the unfiltered ability to select star to a business user and a 5-minute check on how they use it, right? Is the best argument not to democratize it fully. So in both cases, in terms of a society at large, and in terms of data-driven organization, the key is what's the average in terms of ability, technical and business and this capability of the actual user to utilize this data, to utilize this freedom, because it's not just you have the rights to select star, you have the rights to open up a data catalog, look up whatever data field you like and just roll with it, but you also have the responsibility to go about it in an economical, in a reasonable, in a professional way. And what you soon find is that with an increasing complexity and an increasing volume of data and just increasing number of tools that you have to know, that you need just an uplift in the average, in the median ability of a user to deal with this, and then they can profit from the data democracy. Otherwise, they're just gonna not use the tools and have parallel, just like we used to have parallel ITs. They will have parallel databases in Excel and all of that. So
I mean, I wanna make sure I steer the conversation a little bit. Ivo, you're wonderfully on fire, and I love it. I also think about data democracy in the terms that you're talking about here, right? I've been thinking about it while doing the podcast, also prior to doing the podcast, that data democracy is something where if you compare it to society and to societal democracy, then we can't all be judges. We can't all be the police. We can't all be the ministers and the government and like all the public agencies we have. We can't all be that, but they're part of democracy. And what we are experiencing as the lucky citizens we are of democracies is the liberties of democracy, not the technical details of it, not the hassle of actually running it. And then there is this constant conversation that needs to take place that is really the upkeeping of a democracy. A democracy can very easily deteriorate in society I see if we don't insist on it and practice it and think about what it is all the time. And it's not to make IT as intellectually difficult as the structuring of society, but here we are facing this enormous potential, right, of the IT landscape with all the data it has internally in organizations and at large in on the web, on the internet. How do
It-
we get the maximum out of that? Anyway, Ivo, please take it away.
yeah, well, this brings us to something that that actually what is it? So yeah, so yeah, transparency, and obviously have segregation of responsibilities and different areas of expertise. Also relates to how companies and data is fits together. But I'm thinking, in order to be able, everyone was talking about this self-service analytics, right?
Mhm.
So they said, "Oh, we'll just give minimal governance and we'll let it roll." It seems that governance is very difficult, right? Creating
Mm.
proper data governance is very hard, and in banking used to be driven by regulators.
Mm.
One of the things that they really did well, I think, is to just um, provide legislation and rules and checks to make sure that banks that this is basically post the Lehman crash, all the legislation globally that rolled out from in individual countries and global regulations around it. But that did not happen in many industries. Like they have to come to the realization uh, on their own that having proper data governance is a must, because data governance is not a very interesting, very
Mhm.
sexy business case that you bring into the management and get them all excited about data governance, and they're just funding this all the way through. Right, this is something that is a fundamental infrastructure type of work where you really need um, very good understanding of what you're trying to achieve on a multi-year platform, and then create all the teams, the tools, and really tailor it to our organization, so you're not over provision on governance and over bureaucratic, but you're also not completely, like, this is not an anarchy, it's still democracy that has rules. I think most self-service, like 1.0 platforms did not work well, and
No.
everyone took the learnings, but that was the idea. No, we'll provide minimal governance, then you guys roll with it, and business users can use it. And just talking about data governance has become only, let's say, interesting again with the hype around AI. And I think this is a time where we slide in that we're going to have a joint event in Vienna,
Yeah.
where we're going to talk just about that.
Yes, exactly. That's the surprise element that we were to unveil here at the end of the
I hope I didn't
conversation.
steal the thunder. It's just
No,
a
no, no,
feeling
no,
of
no, no. You should steal everything you possibly can, Ivo. I love you. Steal it. So yes, we're going to do an event together in Vienna, and I think the spirit of this conversation is one of, if I may say so, Ivo, of Viennese intellectualism, uh, marinated in data and IT. And I think that's just the kind of conversation we need to have in this community, right? Where we do not only talk tech, flash capabilities, and buzzwords, but where we really get into the core things, the real substance of where the tech is taking us and where we should try to steer it at, right? That's really what the conversation we need to have around AI these years. Just not only having this hype, and luckily, and I think you agree with me that the hype around AI has flattened a little, and we're getting our more realistic about, okay, how can we actually apply it in organization? What I think we are lacking, and what we also need to discuss is this governance element. So not only how can we use it, but how should we use it? What would be the proper way to encapsulate it? And again, how should we use adjacent technology, knowledge? How should we discover data so that we can make AI more structured, more basically useful and correct? Think that is a discussion that we that everyone should have, and we will be having that in Vienna on December 7th in the morning in the beautiful Erste Bank building in downtown Vienna.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I think the story around how it's just like the invention of the transformer just sat for a while until you had ChatGPT 3, GPT 3, and ChatGPT just shock everyone. But then all the practical issues around using it for everything just became evident, right? After the initial shock, I think you're fully right that people started asking questions. Well, what does that mean for me in my industry? What use cases must I do with it? What can I do with it? How about infrastructure that I need or people that we need for this to transform our process to have certain elements
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
this? Do I need open source models? Do I need do I need is this generic models, are they going to be the answer for everything, or are we going to have specialized models? Every regulated industry person, decision maker, immediate thought is, okay, we need to what kind of infra do we need to get this up and running on premise? And you tell them the amount, they're like, oof, and suddenly the business case is not so great. But then, well, yeah, because essentially there is a huge benefit to using the economies of scale that a cloud can provide. But there's also all sorts of interesting hardware things coming up where you would be able to run these things on premise as well, not only in the small but also on the larger scale. So all these practical problems, and then and then data governance pops in again. Okay, do I have the data for it? How do I find it in my company? Right? Who owns it? Where can I see what we what are the problems? Like, it seems to me that there's lots of decision makers that have because we need to remember in the history of this AI hype cycles that this is like it's a sine wave kind of a thing. There used to be a previous hype around AI ML, and it kind of died out after a lot of use cases and their promised business case numbers didn't materialize, right? Where you
Exactly.
invested millions of euros, dollars, what have you, and it turns out that the uplift wasn't 100%. It was 2.3% or 5 points, but it was just not the. And then the interest immediately died out. Some programs got canceled or teams reorganized. Then data engineering became interesting because this is where the bulk of the spend goes, and not really on the data science. But now with generative AI, that's clearly across every industry. Everyone is talking about that, from doctors to lawyers to bankers to production companies. Everyone, supply chain, and everyone in between.
It's really interesting, and I just want to comment a little bit. I think first of all, what you said about data governance, I think that is actually a very good. There is a very obvious link to society again here, and the societal democracies and the governance democracy. They are usually not that tech savvy, right? The regulations and the laws that are being put forward is something that, to a certain extent at least, misunderstands technology or limits it in a way that's not very cool. And yet we need that law. We need those regulations. We need them badly. And they're doing the best they can. And I wouldn't be any better at it. It's just that there is this mismatch between many initiatives in terms of laws and regulations and the technology itself. Now, very, very good governors, I dare call them that, are capable of reaching some kind of compromise where they understand technology and they understand the regulatory reality around that technology. And then they create regulations that are really powerful and good. And I think in terms of data governance in an enterprise context, it's a little bit the same thing. You see a lot of data governance people not being that tech savvy, and it's really a problem because then they build raw. I mean, the classic example is the security aware CISO, right? That has too little technical understanding of, for example, the cloud, and and what constitutes security on the cloud. Then they provide this kind of data governance that comes with the best of intentions, but is really damaging both the technology and the business at large, right? So we have to, in terms of governance, we have to find that golden middle path between people that are good at creating regulations, but also have a deeply technical understanding. And those people are just so difficult to find, right?
My view on this is that or many levels. Like, I mean, I'm more of a classical liberal, so I'm always very skeptical of regulation, except
Yeah.
in the cases where we absolutely need it. And and
Agreed.
so
Agreed.
the difficulty with this is that before, so we absolutely, like, for example, GDPR and data privacy regulation, we absolutely need it. There's no question around it. It wasn't so obvious in the beginning, might I say, right? But as soon as you read this legislation back with GDPR, and the document reads more like a best practices blog post, then you know it's good. Because then it's about how to create something that really has everyone's best interest at heart, including which we'll see now with the AI Act in Europe, hopefully, is that it also limits the amount of bad stuff that individual national governments can do, because it's a huge risk, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so having legislation around there to limit their ability to misuse this, the way that many countries around the world are just eager to get their hands on more advanced AI technology in order to, cement their position in their respective societies, and just basically to everyone's peril, is very important. While at the same time, it is important that we also get knowledgeable people who can instill sensible regulation around, using AI models for unethical things, lack of transparency, and unethical behavior in general should be severely discouraged and punished by by such regulation. And what I think will end up happening in Europe, because let's face it, Europe is a great museum. It's great. It looks great. It's very comfortable, nice to live in. But we are kind of, as Europeans, losing out on the technology race globally, with very few exceptions. Things happening, but interestingly happening not really in the EU, right? Switzerland, UK, leading the way in many things, the way that I guess Vienna, Berlin, and Paris are really not. I now don't want to neglect Warsaw and Bucharest and other places in the European Union, or Athens, but it really feels like the whole thing is driven by Asia and North America, right, around AI. And since everyone will more or less, for different reasons, create AI regulation, what will end up happening, that we can pretty much export for the good towards the world, is sensible European AI regulation that others will have to comply with in order to access our enormous market, right? In a way that even the United States would not, I think, be able to control as good. So, to be honest, I actually view this positively. Kind of unusual for me in that case, because the Europeans have done, we're good at regulation, not only as a joke but also actually. So I think that's positive, right? And then you can have like practices and startups around handling this, exported all over the world, where European companies are the best at data governance, or among the best, where they, both in terms of tools and practices and solving practical challenges, kind of have to push the others to adopt them. So in this regard, I'm optimist for Europe, right?
Well, if you are a pessimist, Ivo, you are the most happy, energetic pessimist I know. But that said, I am actually quite an optimist for European tech. I think the recent years have revealed that Europeans are getting back on their feet in terms of tech. I gotta say, honestly, I had the same kind of feeling a couple of years ago, and I gotta say, it's completely unscientific. I have no documents backing this up, but what I am aware of course, is that we, of course, lack the big funds, the VCs of the Bay Area. We don't have them in Europe, and so a lot of startups are getting bought, of course, by American money, basically. So I'm not that much of a pessimist, but I do, and I do also recognize that you mentioned a lot of tech pockets there in London, in Bucharest, in Warsaw. There are a lot of, I think, very interesting hubs around in Europe. I gotta say.
I think the solution to this is actually much simpler than a lot of people and also a lot of governments. Maybe not the solution, but like a supercharger for European tech would be if like we don't need all the stupid money, chasing absolutely from a European perspective. You look at their portfolios, like they really invested like 100 million in this. Like that does not make sense at all. It only makes
No.
sense if it's like this crazy thing will continue, which with might very well, but I would never, like as a European, you're much more cautious about this. So
Yeah.
we're not really missing out on much. And I think the money will come under, we need two things to happen in Europe, which might very well happen. One is we need the ability to, and some individual countries, like we have offices in several countries. We opened up an office in Spain not that long ago, and have offices in Central Europe and Western Europe, and we see the differences in how quickly you can basically employ someone from outside of Europe to relocate them, because you need the best and the brightest to come in Europe. Yeah, we have great people, but we also need everyone that can contribute positively to come here and realize
Of course.
their ideas. So I think the whole and some individual countries realize that and doing stuff about it, but it's happening slower, and it's like pockets around the map of like, okay, so this is not great. You really need the ability to get someone, and when you look at how the US is absolutely incapable of creating sensible immigration legislation for like decades already, it's a pretty low grab to get the best talent in Europe to work for our startups. So it's not really. And the rest is obviously dealing with some of the other I don't know, taxation, other you need to deal with a lot of issues, but it's still very much possible to have like a European tech boom. It is happening despite the efforts of the governments and not because of them. If you look at it from if you zoom out and you look at it from a European perspective, I know individual countries and people listening be like, "Oh, my country did this." And so, yeah, but your country. I'm talking about Europe as a whole, and Europe as a whole needs to get this down a little better. And I'm still optimistic that we'll do it. It's still much easier to get people to come to Europe than to go to the United States or even Canada, and so our prospects are not that bad. And again, if I might allow it, I think Eastern Europe is kind of leading the way in many things, and Western Europe is catching up for many other reasons. But
agreed. No, I agreed. I definitely see the same pattern. I have worked with people from especially from Poland, and they are just so good, and they have just they have kept getting better and better and better for the last 10-15 years at a pace where I gotta say they are hungry to prove just how good they are. I know they have Microsoft has many preferred partners in Poland, and that's for a reason, right? They are really really very very good, and yeah. So
yeah, we
and
have an
I think
office in
there's
Poland. I can testify to that. We have great
and they are just well educated, hardworking, and they cost what, a fourth, or like, I don't know, but if you compare, I guess every European, if you compare to the US, salaries are lower than in the US. But I think that will also be a competitive advantage for us going forward. I mean, a data engineer taking care of pipelines on the west coast of the US, they have like the salary of a CEO in Europe, right?
Yeah, but this is kind of but this is also something that I think post pandemic was great for most of Europe, pretty globally, but also for Europe, because you had all of these access to talent that doesn't just have to travel to the office every day, and the working from remotely became the norm. So even if you go to the office, you're mostly sitting on calls. So this is great, and I think you still have to consider the fact that European economy, especially if you consider Western Europe, compared to the United States, the difference has grown. a lot, meaning that Western Europe is severely fallen behind and not for decades not growing the way that US is growing. So
Yeah, that is right.
there's a lot of things that we need to realize that we shouldn't be a museum. We should be at the forefront of things. And
Yeah,
and there's quite a few of
I
changes that happen.
agree. I
But
agree,
look,
Ivo. We
our
need more
companies,
entrepreneurial spirit in the in European Union, right, and in Europe at large.
it
But I
must be the
think we
same in
will have
Denmark,
that.
right? Yeah, in
Come
Denmark
again?
in Denmark, it's not much different, right? There's a lot of people prefer safety and the corporate experience, and there's
Yeah,
not a lot of
yeah.
entrepreneurial kind of by default. And
No,
if
no.
if I have to do a gig at a company for a while to get some experience, that's just a temporary thing until I set up my own shop. This is not how Europeans how we think, right? It's like, oh, we need a stable company, come in
Yeah,
there, stay there,
yeah.
and
For 14 years and don't move, just do the same thing again and again and again for years, right? For me, that's a horror vision. I could never be. I wouldn't be able to do that. I need to get a lot of different experiences, and definitely at one point in my life, I will found my company. I have actually done that. It wasn't that successful, but it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Oh, and I
yeah.
also no, I did 2 companies. One that was quite.
Yeah,
Uh,
and this should be like a badge of honor. Like every company
yeah.
you fail at should be like, oh, you did. But I think you have a lot of confidence in the younger generation of Europeans that they will look towards that, because the way in a way, if you consider the fact that diversity is shrinking in Europe,
Hmm. Hmm.
in a way, well, you can misunderstand this that it's a bad thing. In effect, we are more beginning to be alike. So the differences
Mm.
are smaller, and the differences between the entrepreneurial spirit of the countries that are catching up and the established countries where you knew that your stable 20-year or tenure at a company was the norm, and this because you how you've seen it. This is all kind of equalizing, normalizing. So I think this
Hmm.
will play out for the better in the data space. I still think that Europe could still come up with and continue to be a leader in various elements of it. Not only export cars, which we aren't really doing that much of,
No, no,
or
we
should
will stop
really
doing that.
petrol-based cars, or should not be our the good of the future. But
No, you're right.
still, in terms of leading how we transform these enterprises and how we deal with AI in an ethical way, and how we one of the things that we do, that one of my products that I'm focusing on is a framework that we're developing. If you allow me to just explain, because it ties up to this transformation discussion and how we move forward, is having we have essentially a tool that is a framework built around how do you migrate large scale projects from legacy systems into modern technologies, and projects that you couldn't do it before because the economics of it was prohibitive, to move away from something like COBOL code or SAS code into more modern technology where you need it, where now we have tooling that's based on various including pre-trained or open source and closed source large language models. So there's a huge opportunity in front of us to transform Europe by utilizing this new AI technology, also for just refactoring old projects and just bringing European enterprises, be it in the financial sector or in other sectors that rely, like aviation is an example, where that relies on a lot of legacy code, but also various other industries that actually digitized in the 80s. Well, these guys, they need to migrate away, and now with AI, these projects become economically sensible to do. And so we're very excited about this new wave of migrating old projects, and we have some tooling and IP around that is very exciting. And I'm happy to report it comes out of Europe.
Yeah, exactly. And that more and more tech should do. And I think this is a fantastic conclusion on our conversation. Thank you, Ivo, for being on. And I will see you the 7th of December for a tech breakfast at Erste Bank in Vienna.
Thank you so much.